Hey, thanks for tuning in to this newest episode of Leadership in Tough Places. My name is Joey. I lead the Block Church in Philadelphia, multi-site church, and our goal is to help leaders who are leading in difficult or challenging environments, whether you're in ministry, leading a nonprofit, in the workplace. And today's episode is going to be great. We've got an awesome conversation with Dan McCarty, who's the executive chief of the Philadelphia Fire Department, also in our church. We're talking about leadership in family. As a father, leadership working in a city. There is so much we're getting to, especially Dan's story. You're going to be inspired. Stay tuned. Let's watch now. Well, what's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode. And I have my trusted sidekick, Julio, in the house.
Here we go. Come on, somebody.
Xavier didn't make it to this episode. He couldn't handle it.
I didn't even know we got PTO for the podcast, but apparently we do.
That's rich coming from you. And then we've got Dan McCarty. First time. Welcome.
Come on,
First time. Hello, everyone.
Come on.
And as we mentioned, Dan has an important role in Philadelphia Fire Department. Felt like this would be a great episode to chat with you because you're practicing leadership in a really challenging place, city government, one of the largest cities in the United States. And we feel like you could lend us some great stuff for our listeners. What do you think, Julio? You think he can help us?
Yeah, I think he can. I think he's more than qualified.
But before we get into any of that, I want to get into the background of Dan a little bit, okay? Because Dan has some issues. I am aware that Dan is a Cowboys fan, even though he grew up in Philadelphia. So
Born and raised, yes.
this is a problem,
Yep.
and we need to understand this.
It all started when he was a little boy. That's what I remember.
Yeah, most problems do.
Yeah.
So, anyway, Dan, why don't you give us a background on yourself and then help us arrive to why you root for the Dallas Cowboys?
Of course, it's an age-old question that I get being born and raised in the city, grew up in Frankfurt. And I had a cousin, and I remember at a very young age, I might have been about 6 or so at the time, and I just really disliked them. I disliked them.
You liked your cousin?
I didn't.
Oh,
I
you did
disliked
like
them.
your cousin.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, needless to say, he was a big Eagles fan. He's a year older than me. He'd always have like the Eagles starter jacket. And out of whatever you want to call it, I asked my dad. My dad was a Steelers fan. Who do the Eagles hate the most? And he said the Cowboys. And from that day on, I was just loyal to the Cowboys. Knew nothing and didn't get to witness the 3 Super Bowls in the 90s. I was alive, but I really didn't experience it like how, you Eagle fans have been really seeking in the glory.
Yeah.
Hey, Julio, you know what that sounds like to me? It sounds like a rebellion issue.
I, as a fellow petty myself, I love the commitment from childhood until now to continue the legacy of a rivalry. It's
hard to be this loyal to a losing team over the last
Losers.
for sure.
I can remember all the trauma. Romo dropping this. I remember being 2006, Evander Jack's coming to kick the game-winning field goal against Seattle. I remember like yesterday, and I'm doing this thing in my grandmother's hallway, like kicking my thing, like, I gotta do this kick. There wasn't an ounce of me. I've never witnessed heartbreak. That was my earliest aspect of heartbreak, watching them and then just fumble. And then he could have scored. He fell at the 2. Ken Hamlin came behind and tackled him, and it was over. And it's been tragedy ever since.
Oh, man, that's so good. Julio, were you alive in 2006?
Barely. But Dan, what I will say is, man, the gospel's available to all. It's a timeless message. There's still time to confess with your heart to forgive and move on and join the green side.
I love this Eagles team. I will say that. And it's like one of those dynamics to where how can you, it really puts a point on how we are today in America. Like we can't come together on we don't like this, we don't like that. I went deep there, but seriously.
No, it's great.
You got to think about it.
I don't talk to you at church when you wear your jersey or anything like that. So I
hope nobody.
And I'll pray. I'll pray for you on that.
There is a volunteer in the broadcast location. He loves like all sports teams. Okay. But he shows up sometimes and he'll wear a old Redskins jersey. And it's like, it's on game day. And it's like, dude, can you serve? Like, is this allowed? And so anyway, I digress, but
it's a great conversation starter,
It's a good conversation starter. And we should have wore starter jackets today, honestly.
Yeah. That's what
They're still fire. Okay, Dan, I do want you though to a little bit get into your life. Where I know you're from Philadelphia, but like give us your story a little bit.
Sure. Grew up in two adjacent neighborhoods, one being in Frankfort, where I hung out, but Lindenfield Projects is what they were called, Philadelphia Housing Authority, off of Frankfort and McGargy. We lived in there. They're not there anymore. They were demolished in 2010. So I was living there with my grandparents and also living in parts of Frankfort with my father and mother. Yeah, good childhood from what I recall. But at the age of 14, I got a call while I was in Wildwood visiting grandparents that my father had a heart attack, suddenly. And it sucked, and it still sucks to this day, that as a kid, I remember this was 2006, Christmas, December. And I remember my dad called me, and I'm down Wildwood, and my grandparents down Wildwood. I loved going there because they had more money than we had in Philadelphia.
And just for context for the people who are watching this not from Philadelphia, Wildwood is the beach.
Yes, about 90 miles southeast of Philadelphia. And most people call it going down the Jersey Shore. So some people go down to Atlantic City. People go down Wildwood, etc.
Just a side note, I know we're talking about your dad's heart attack, so not to be insensitive here, but a lot of people, I'll explain to people, man, I love living in Philadelphia. We're at the beach in 45 minutes, whatever. And like, what beach? And I'm like, well, the Jersey Shore, and people then they automatically get this like image of a bunch of Italians, just, what do they call them? From what was the show? Oh, Jersey Shore.
Jersey Shore show, yeah.
Anyway, and I'm like, well, it's not quite like that.
Yeah.
But also kind of. So anyway, keep going.
But being down there, and then it was right after Christmas, I got like a new iPod, which they were like fairly new at the time, and I was so excited. I was
an iPad or an iPod.
iPod.
Do you know what that is, Julio?
I'm very familiar. I remember growing up with
really
those too. Yeah,
you had one of those.
Yeah, I had the little shuffle ones, and I had the iPod Touch.
Okay, big dog.
I think we're beyond the point of what is that called when I can't be arrested for committing a crime like piracy, statute of limitations, because I used to use LimeWire.
Oh, yeah.
Everybody knows about LimeWire and how it just destroyed computers left and right.
Yeah.
But I was sitting there downloading music and whatever. My phone rings and it's my dad. And he's asking me like, oh, what did you get for Christmas and stuff like that? And I just remember like, yeah. I got this. And all right, I didn't want to be on it because I was in the middle of just like anything. When we're in the middle of something that we just have this whatever, any other distraction, we're just cutting it out. Fast forward, that next morning, I get a phone call from my grandmother that my dad had a heart attack. And he got rushed to Nazareth Hospital in Philadelphia. The paramedics got to him. And then he had to be airlifted from Nazareth to Hahnemann Hospital, which was a hospital in Philadelphia in Center City at the time. And he was in the ICU. And I'm a 14-year-old kid at this point, and my life just flipped the switch, and I didn't know what was, reality and, legitimate. So,
did he pass?
He suffered for 9 months in ICU and then passed that following September. Yeah.
Well, jeez, man. I'm sorry.
But with that, I learned a lot, and I didn't realize it in the moment. And I think there's a beauty in that as well, is like, when you're going through struggle, when you're going through some of the darkest days you could ever have fathomed, like there's always light in there. Like I look back on who I am today, and it would have not have been possible, as this sounds, if I didn't have that tragic loss of my father and really have to be impromptu pushed into essentially this leadership role in my household.
Mm-hmm. I want to come back to that. You did say something that I thought was worth diving deeper into. You were not paying attention necessarily, not being present, and then this was kind of the last moment that your dad was, I guess, fully with it. Do you carry regrets or shame, or did you at some point, or how have you moved on from that?
Praise be to God, because truthfully, I still carry a little bit, if I'm going to be honest. Yeah. It's not as much as it used to like wear me down. Like, imagine that, because I didn't even give you this aspect of it. So he essentially had a heart attack, which is identified as a myocardial infarction in the medical world. So his heart stopped. It's in an arrhythmia that isn't sustainable with life. And they had to put a breathing tube in his throat. My father at the time was very obese. He was about 6'3", And when I got to him to see him in the hospital bed showed 707 pounds. Some of that is with some of the equipment that was on, but my father was easily a 550, almost 600 pound.
Wow.
Man. So needless to say, he was intubated, and in the process of being intubated and put on a ventilator, it damaged his vocal cords. So while he was in the hospital for those next 9 months, never got to hear his voice until he died, and still didn't hear it. So I think back on it now, and it's like the last time I had the opportunity to hear his voice, didn't really care for it. You know, I was so focused or hyper focused on my distraction. I carried that for a while, and you know, as you see, I get a little, you know, it stings a little bit, but it's not a sting and like a shame and all this. Like, I've forgiven myself for that.
That's good.
But it's also to understand like there's a greater good, you know, and that's how I feel about the situation.
I appreciate you sharing that. Julio, I think you could lend any thought or advice. And I know you lost your father too. And
yeah, I think it's, you know, it's one of those things where, you know, you can move on, you can heal from the situation, but that wound's always going to be there, you know, and there's going to be things in life that remind you of that. And, you know, you might not notice this, Dan, or maybe you do, but you are like an all-in guy. Like, when I'm talking to you, like, I have all of you. And I just wonder if some of that came from that, you know. And again, when we talk about the scriptures, I love the scripture in Genesis, right, where Joseph is talking to his brothers.
Genesis 50.
Yeah, what you have intended for evil, God has used for good. And then I'm reminded in Romans chapter 8, God works all things out for the good of those who love him. And although God wasn't for these tragic things to happen in our life, he does use them, and we see so many scriptural precedents for that. And so I just wonder, even for ourselves, how much of us is developed out of our worst seasons and out of our worst pains and out of our worst heartaches. How much of has that developed the man in us, the leaders in us. And I think that we probably all resonate with that. You know, I'm a leader. I love clarity, you know, and that's because I grew up in chaos, and I wouldn't be so committed to clarity had I not had that. Had I had everything figured out, I probably would be a different kind of leader. Okay. And so I just think I see so many of those silver linings in that, and I think only God's grace can allow us to do that and to not succumb to those really weighty moments in life.
Amen. It's a form of refining. Yes. You know, they talk about like how, and we pray for God to refine us. Right. And like that aspect was, if I look at my story, that was a huge monumental moment for me to be refined.
How does that impact you too? And by the way, Julio, great stuff. It just always communicates so smooth and clearly, doesn't he?
Yeah.
Anyway,
he's the whole reason I even started coming to church. I met this guy, and it was just like, just from that aspect.
We'll get to that. Which, by the way, I just had this thought. This is totally irreverent, but I was thinking about LimeWire and then Napster. You remember Napster?
Yes.
I was running a business in middle school with Napster.
Ringtones?
Statute of limitations here. I would go to football practice, and I had a middleman. And I would say to this little kid, hey, I need this album and this album, if you can get that to me on a CD. And then he had his costs. And then, of course, I had my costs at the middle school. So I would take orders during the day. And I'd say it'd be a couple days before you can get your album. I would, tell him at football practice. Then the next day at practice, he'd deliver the product. I'd give him his pay. Then I would go collect the pay the next day at school. I mean, man, my parents found a lot of cash in my sock drawer one time. Cash. I know. Anyway, I was just practicing, how to raise money for church planting.
Come on, somebody.
Leadership in Tech Places started early. Anyway, please forgive me, all you musical artists. Anyway, I digress. Going back to being present, family dynamics. Is your mother still alive?
My mother is still alive. Never had the closest relationship. I always viewed my grandmother as my mother just because of that motherly affection I got from my grandmother. And I do have a younger sibling, Alfie, who has autism. So we were 4 years apart. So that was a really thrusting aspect of this. Like, my dad's gone, the man of the house is gone. Now it's for me to step up for my younger brother.
I love Alfie, man. I'll never forget the first day I met him. I didn't even know he was your brother. Do you remember that?
I do.
Yeah.
I just sat back and watched like your interaction. He was so pure to him. Like, it's one thing to be like, oh, Julio knows that's my brother. He's being extra loving. Julio had no idea who he was. Just thought it was a new stranger in the church.
What's the right way to say? Is his autism like heavy, like high? Is that the right way
So
to say that?
Asperger's, for that aspect, is what he's diagnosed with.
Okay.
But it's also his Asperger's is it affects basically his social skills, right? So you'll see like his social, like he's smart with different things, but he also has like delays in a lot of areas.
It's
Asperger's.
Asperger.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's talk about your family dynamics, right? So mom, not necessarily connected. Was there any reason she was just emotionally disconnected?
I think, and my wife kind of dug more deeper. Like I knew my mom was special herself. You know what I mean? I don't know what the actual like diagnose she may have of underlying, things, but I just never felt connected as a child. So children, we just look for time, and I never really got that. And that time that I did get as I got older, it just felt like I was the one forcing it, because everybody'd be like, well, that's your mother, you have to. And I'm like, I'm 9.
Yeah.
Yep.
So about your family. So you grow up, father dies 14. Did you go to college or what did you do after high school?
No. So high school, I was involved in sports, clubs, academics. I was good. I was in the magnet program. So I only went to this school because.
Okay, magnets over here.
Yeah.
Both of you guys, man.
But with that,
I barely graduated college.
It's so funny. I was thinking about this recently. In my senior year, like I had a pretty stereotypical like senior, like I'm a kind of a cool person, fun personality, because I was a class clown, not because of anything else. And I remember it was like April-ish, like end of March, April-ish, and I remember having a conversation like, I don't even know what college I'm going to. Like I have these thoughts in my head, like I want to go to the Beasley School of Law because I thought I was going to become a corporate lawyer. Like that's where my mind was going, but I didn't have anybody like guiding me. Like we had school counselors, but I just come from a place of I don't look to ask for help, especially from someone I don't know, because God forbid if I say, hey, I need help, and I get slapped away or something like that. And that's probably something from childhood with that. But being in high school, I thought I had a plan until the plan, turned upside down. Literally, I was going to visit Rutgers. At the time, Greg Schiano was a football coach. Ray Rice was there. And I was going up there for potential, they had a camp and was looking to be a walk-on or get some type of scholarship. Rutgers, because it was close. I didn't want to go far. And I was driving my aunt's 1997 Chevy Cavalier on 95 North through the worst rainstorm I can ever imagine. The car hydroplaned, going about 50 some miles an hour on a major highway. I was in the middle lane. I get hit by about 3 other cars, and my vehicle ends up on the side of the road upside down an embankment. But I remember when it was spinning, and I still remember this like it was yesterday. Your life flashes before your eyes, like those traumatic moments.
For sure.
And I don't know if it's just something of just your brain just goes there, but I remember like an intimate moment that I was on the L and I had to be like 5 or 6. As the car is spinning, I just see it. It's like Grand Theft Auto, like you're playing, you're about to die, it's about to be wasted kind of thing.
Yeah.
That's what it felt like. I was spinning.
So glad you're playing.
Yeah. Again, childhood's there. But with that, I just remember being on the L and stopping at the Huntington station. And this is me remembering a childhood memory. My dad used to get off and I would go with him. And he actually had a house on Cumberland, 1900 block of Cumberland. I didn't know as a child, but that was
this is what was going through your brain while you were.
Yep, I remember that. And maybe that's just some type of like positive memory that I had as a kid, riding the bus with him and then going to this house that was actually a NA house. My father, I didn't know, had an addiction to amphetamines and I think potentially crack cocaine, So I can officially say I was a crack baby,
Oh my gosh, Dan.
But you have to take, like, I think in life, so many people put like negative connotations on stuff. Like all of us have a history, a past, a family, and all these other things. And versus like living behind that shame, like just embracing it. Like, yes, I was once here, but here is where I am.
That's great.
It was just saying it with such joy and laughter. Hey, I was a crack.
I feel like, you ever I have really like dark humor sometimes. We talk about this all the time. Like trauma wars. Like, everybody's trying to see who was worse off. Like I feel like we're about to into that.
But I was on the side of the road.
Hold on. Julio is so bad, Dan. You don't understand.
Oh, I know.
If he doesn't have something or whatever, he'll be like, "Thanks, Dad." And where's Dad? And then he'll be like, somebody will like something bad. He'll be like, "It's life, man. You know what it's like to catch a stray. Walking home. Just." He'll come with a new story every time, even though it's the same story we heard all the time about. I lived in Kensington, Lehigh, Kensington, Allegheny, wherever you lived, and F in Allegheny, whatever you live,
for sure,
and all his trauma. So anyway, I don't want to get him started on a trauma wars.
All that to say, so you're hydroplaning.
Thank you.
This you have this core memory. How does that experience shape you?
I just remember in that moment praying.
Were you a Christian or did you?
I don't remember. Well, I was Catholic, so I definitely made my confirmation. I was up to that point. I think in that aspect, I still need to get married and last rites if we talk about Catholicism in that regard. But I remember
hey man, I'm Catholic.
Praying.
I'm Catholic too, right? Once you're Catholic, you're always Catholic, right?
Yeah,
exactly. But I remember praying, and it was more so just felt like really now, if I think back on it, just talking to the Holy Spirit, like the God that's in me.
Yep.
And please, I don't want to die. I don't want to die. I have so much life to live. And then just end up on the side of the road. And the worst injury that I got, because if I show you a picture, which I could, after this podcast, but the car had about 12 to 14 inches of intrusion. So think about the driver's side door pushed in to where the gear shift was. And I was sitting in the driver's seat, and I only came away with deep laceration to my left leg, but besides that, I was fine. I was able to get released from the hospital. But I just remember laying there on the side of the road, and just the funniest thing was just all these cars kept going.
Yeah, nobody stopped.
No one stopped for a good 5 minutes, and it felt like 5 minutes. It might have been shorter. It felt like purgatory.
But how did that alter your life? I mean, did you go, I can't go to walk on, play football?
No. So this is exactly what it did. That was another monumental moment. I remember the first person that stopped, and I have to give him all the glory in that moment. He was a member of the military. I can't remember the exact branch. I want to say Navy, but needless to say, he gave me exact instructions. And at that point, I'm 18. I know nothing about the medical field or anything of this matter. He tells me to look directly at him. Don't move. Everything's going to be okay. So in that moment, I was calm. I was like, I'm good. I'm able to breathe. And I just followed his instructions. Next thing you know, fire trucks pulled up, ambulances pulled up, and they're breaking my windows. And I'm like, oh, this goes traumatic. But he's telling me, don't move. Because in that aspect, he's really warning me not to move my neck. Because God forbid I have a cervical injury that's secondary to shock. I don't even realize. So break the glass, hands come in. Next thing you know, they're using the jaws of life as they're deemed. And someone's holding my head with their gloves. And the whole time I was like, this is cool.
Not feeling nothing. Yeah, you're.
I'm just like, this is cool. And I remember being on that hard board as they put the cervical collar on me and everything. I'm in the back of the ambulance and this aspect,
adrenaline,
and I'm just like, I'm gonna get in so much trouble. You remember as a kid, that's the first thing you think of, I'm gonna be in trouble.
Yep.
And my aunt, it's so funny, whose car I was using. I remember calling her, the nurses, put a cell phone, or at the time it was probably just a landline, a phone, to my ear so I can call. And I told my aunt, I said, hey, I'm in JFK Hospital in Edison, New Jersey. I got in an accident. And the first thing she asked,
how's my car?
Where's the car? Where's the car?
Your aunt from Philly?
And yes, South Philly, born and raised. And my response was, it's destroyed. And she just gives out this yell as if
it was the most Philly story.
Me, how are you? Nothing like that. My grandmother gets back on the phone, and I was just like, well, this is where I'm at, and the address. And I think I don't remember who brought me home. I think it was one of my uncles or something. I don't know. But even that was traumatic, just coming back, being on the road, because I feel like this PTSD of seeing cars. I remember being in the back seat with the towel over my head with my eyes closed, just trying to fall asleep. But that moment changed my life in the aspect of I never knew what a first responder was. I never knew what the fire department, they put out fires and stuff like that. But them showing up, providing the medical care, putting me on that long spine board, after that, I was like, what was that? That was so cool. And I researched it. I look up what an EMT is. I reach out to some of my friends who are in this type of career.
How'd you research it? Did they have internet way back then?
No, there was Google. Even before Google, you had like Ask Jeeves and all the different operating.
I'm just nodding my head. I have no idea what you're talking about. Yeah.
And then, so at that moment, I thought about going to EMT school. Now that somehow transitioned, like instead of going directly into college, and I thought about the aspect taking the first year off, but taking classes at community to keep up my red shirt status if I did want to walk on somewhere, because that was still a goal. But yeah, I jumped into EMT school because I thought about the money aspect. Like, we didn't come from much at all. Where I used to think like 40 grand was like so much money. You know, I remember somebody in the project saying how they make like 40 grand. And I was like, oh my God, that's so much money. You know what I mean? And during this time, like, I don't know what it would equate to, you know, in 2025 and stuff like that. But like, now to really look back and be like, man, like, that's what keeps me humble. Truly, that's what keeps me humble, is like remembering like those times, those moments. And like, it's always about the simple things in life.
It is. So you go to EMT school, and then when did you meet your wife?
7 years later from where you're at chronologically. So
okay. Well, is there any milestones or moments that we need to hit before you met her?
More than likely, yeah, after EMT school, I then jumped into paramedic school, working for like a local ambulance company. And I was really smart in paramedic school. All my, you know, fellow classmates can attest to that. But for some reason, I was struggling with passing like my national registries, basically like my boards to be a certified paramedic, and couldn't pass that. I was struggling with that. And at that time, I had my aunt, whose car I was using, just suddenly passed away. 2012.
Wow.
And the day before, she was saying how she felt sick, so she was going to sleep on the couch. So when I came in the house, she was laying on the couch, that she wasn't feeling well. I got her something to drink. I went upstairs, and I was like, I don't know, like 19 or so at the time. I remember it was like 2 a.m. She called me, and I'm like, hey, I'm like, why is she calling me? And I like try to answer, and I can't. I'm like, she must be butt dumb. Mind, she's in the living room. Wow. I'm on the 3rd floor off of Sargent Street, where we lived in Kensington at the time. This was after leaving the projects, because they closed down. But needless to say, she called me, and I didn't go downstairs to see what she needed. That next morning, I had to go out. Forget what errand I was going to run, but she was on the couch. She looked like she was asleep, so I was like, I'm not going to bother her. You guys know where this story's going.
Yeah, sheesh.
I get a phone call like maybe 10 minutes later saying that like she's dead on the couch. So imagine these moments, right? And that's just the second one you guys have heard. You know, God has such a way of truly refining you in something that's like, whoa. But that I carried for a while, because I used to, at the time I had an HTC, I think that was the brand. It was an Android. Before I got the iPhone, it was like this big, you know, cell phone. And she left me a voicemail, and I remember listening to it, and it was like something like in the regards of like, Danny, help. You know, I don't feel good. And I never listened to that voicemail. That's what she called me at 2 a.m. So that was rough.
Let's pause there and maybe unpack some leadership thoughts with some of this. So you've had 2 situations now, pretty drastic. Well, 3 really. What do you feel like, for our audience, they need to understand from a leadership perspective when it comes to sudden death, not being present, you know, managing guilt, any of those things? What were some takeaways, again, that maybe you or Julio, you want to speak into from some of this?
Well, I truly think that God was moving in a way to, in that aspect, you have these acute, sudden things you weren't preparing for, because it's one thing to be prepared, and it's like, oh, you know, your loved one isn't at a place where, you know, like this is happening. Like, this is like, my aunt was cool 2 days ago, and now literally 2 days later, I didn't answer her call at 2 a.m. when she was asking for help. And then now I have to shift into, I don't have time for my emotions. And it's just like in everyday leadership, like you guys know as pastors, like if something happens, like suddenly, like we have a church to serve, we have things to step up to. And it's the same thing with my role currently with the fire department. Like I remember, and not to like fast forward, but just think about it from this aspect that when an emergency happens here in the city, like right now, I'm not ready for that next call to go in the sense of like, I know exactly what it is, but through certain preparations, it's fight or flight. You know, your sympathetic nervous system kicks in, and it's your time to like just step into that role. And seeing all these aspects of my life that kind of really prepared me, because when I sit back and think like, well, how did you train to get off of work 5 p.m., get ready to go take your wife to an Italian restaurant in the Northeast, but suddenly hear that there's a plane that potentially just crashed on Cottman Avenue in Philadelphia, stop, revert that, put my uniform back on, drive into work and activate our operational emergency room, which we have down at our headquarters for, you know, major events. And, you know, it's our emergency operations center, which is called EOC. So that activates. And next thing you know, I have all these federal state partners. Again, it went from just something acute happens and how are you responding? It's not a moment like, oh my goodness. And I don't know what to do in this situation. But as a leader, like things that happen in your life have prepared you, whether it's stuff that happens in your childhood that you just know how to go and get through. But sometimes in life, you're never going to be prepared for everything, but it's about how you respond. And that's always been a takeaway for me. Like even in the worst moments, and I can feel in my heart, like this is really bad, but the people around me can't see this really bad. And that's what I think about in my childhood. My father, I'm sad. But I have my grandmother. I have my younger brother. I have my grandparents. I have cousins that they're going to look to me for that motivation. So,
you know, we always say if you sweat in preparation, you know, you're less likely to bleed in battle. And you can't be prepared for every crisis necessarily, or you can't imagine or picture all crises. But I do think there's an aspect of always having margin or being prepared the best you can to handle unexpected situations, because the one thing that is guaranteed in life and leadership is there's going to be a crisis.
Yes.
There's going to be chaos. And so I'm interested. I know preparation for you sounds like I'm prepared emotionally and I'm doing my best to be prepared logistically. You want to speak to a little bit of ways that either one of you, but Dan particularly, how are you preparing yourself emotionally for crisis? And how do you prepare yourself logistically for crisis?
One thing I'll say is for the first, I'll say 10 years of me being a first responder, like becoming an EMT, working in the 911 system, you see some rough stuff.
Yeah.
Right. And I've always had solace being able to be there on someone's worst day, whether rendering aid or even emotional support. And in those moments, why have I been good at this? It's because I've been blessed with the unique ability to identify with people. I've been on the other side of 911 calls when responders show up to assist and to help somebody through this aspect of their loved one just died in front of them. What is step 2 for them? They're not prepared for this. And that's also an aspect of leadership on how to be able to lean into others and know what they need. And how do you prepare for that? Well, there's 2 levels. One, it's just what preparation do you just passively have that you've accumulated through the years, and what intentional practice have you put in? Like, who are your mentors? Who are some leaders that you look up to? What are some common traits that they have? And one big thing with me and talking about like the traumatic stuff we see is I never knew how to like vent fully, right? Like you have your peers, and after a rough call, you might talk about it in a fun, dark humor kind of way, because that's our way of venting in first responders. But the best thing I ever did was actually find like a legitimate therapist that I can just talk to, be myself, and get this out, because there isn't no guidebook for, being in the middle of North Philly where someone just gave birth to two babies, and one is in the toilet, and both mom and dad are deaf and mute. So you're trying to obtain a history, see what's going on, and all you hear is just frantic yelling. And then one of the infants or fetuses, for this matter, neonates, truly, by definition, medical terms, is they're translucent, meaning that you can basically see through this fetus of being 4 months, 5 months. But that's still a life that we have to obviously work and get their heartbeat going, and then do that whole scene, manage all that, get them to the appropriate hospitals, and then be ready for the next one.
Jeez.
Yeah. It's really good. I think, Dan, talk a little bit about, you're doing a great job professionally, what that looks like. Can you talk, Dan, the husband and father, right? You have, I lose count. They run around so much.
4.
3 or 4. Okay, 4.
3 boys, 1 girl.
They're amazing. Most beautiful family you'll ever see. I have 5 magnets, collectibles from you guys. You guys send for all the holidays on my fridge.
Nobody sent me a magnet. That's
crazy. It's beautiful. It's great.
Appreciate it.
Yeah. Anyways, so talk to me about how, as a father, as a husband, you prepare, right? Because we heard the professional side, but obviously I have a personal relationship with your wife. I know how supportive she is of you. But can you talk about, in marriage, how do you prepare the expectations of, hey, this is what's going on in my family dynamics and those things?
Well, the only way marriage truly works is you have to know yourself, right? Because if you don't know yourself, your wife will expose it. Identify the weaknesses that you have, and it's not to beat you down, but it's more so, again, this aspect of refining, and that's what our wives are. They're mirrors, just like me as a husband. I'm a mirror to her. So having my wife, who is the most amazing woman I could have ever been blessed with,
we should have her on the podcast more than Dan.
Goodness.
She would have been great.
And the 4 children that I have, and then 2 of them having autism, being diagnosed with that, is a whole nother avenue of challenges. But it truly is just about taking one day at a time. And I take solace in identifying, like, there's a reason our Lord's Prayer says this, give us this day our daily bread. We're so worried about what next week looks like next year. And I'm falling short of this standard as well. Like, my anxiousness or dwellingness and finding that aspect of, like, even you talk about being a father, having dad guilt, right? Imagine being a leader, you're in a prominent role, there's 24 hours in a day.
Yeah.
And making sure that you have adequate time to give to your children who yearn for that.
Yeah.
All children seek their love of their father and intentions with that. But then I'm also having this high level role here in the city of Philadelphia and managing all that. It's quite fun.
My mother ran a business growing up, and I didn't always have a ton of time with my mom, but I had great times with my mom. And I do think about how my mother managed her full life, her travel, her, work, this business. I think my mom always found a way to carve out meaningful time. And I think sometimes we can get caught up in get caught up in needing all this time, when sometimes what's more important is being present and providing quality time and creating moments. And just food for thought, as we're 3 professionals trying to raise children and lead in tough places at high levels, it can be very challenging to give all the time that you desire. But I do think we can be very intentional about providing quality and efficient time, creating moments.
Yes. That's what I think about. We just went out yesterday. They had their scooters and their bike, their first time yesterday, of me trusting them to walk through the neighborhood, and everybody in Philadelphia being so peaceful and letting my kids, who, again, they're so slow holding up traffic, but it's like ducks crossing the street. Like, no one's going to get angry.
Yeah,
like, hurry up and get across. But yes, core moments. And I realize in that, instead of building up that dad guilt, like, hey, yeah, Monday through Friday, my wife reminds me of this all the time. They're in school, they have playgrounds there. They do things. It's not like our kids are just in some type of
right.
So
even if you had a regular job, they're living a regular life to what they know.
And it's just about creating those core memories and just allowing them to like grow, but be intentional, because kids, they look for that. They look for time.
Let's skip ahead. I want to talk about two things and try to give a Reader's Digest, because I want to get back to your career, provide some leadership nuggets. But, tell me about getting married, that adjustment, and then did you also take on a child who wasn't okay? So maybe hit that a little bit, and then really, I'm very interested in your journey of becoming a Christian.
Sure.
How you got saved.
So I'll say, fast forward, I joined the fire department 2014, for those that are kind of following in chronological order. And that same year, I talked about Wildwood, both my grandparents suddenly passed.
Jeez.
One that was iller than the other passed away, but they passed away after my grandfather, who suddenly just passed and was fine. But I know he had a lot of mental distress of just so many, like he's realizing he's 80 and but them just suddenly dying again. You're not prepared for it, but how do you respond?
Right.
Be strong for those around you. Get through it, because at the end of the day, it's just like crying over spilt milk. As much emotion as you want to be there, there's still like that pillar of strength that has to be there. And sometimes it's tough, but fast forward a little bit past 2014, somewhat in the clear of deaths. And I say that because there wasn't many around,
What's left?
Exactly. Of those that I called like core family, right? I still have a grandmother, Mary McCarty, who I love dearly.
Shout out to Mary.
94 years old.
Come on, somebody.
And she probably last recognized me in a sane manner probably 10 plus years ago, secondary to her dementia.
Yeah.
But my love and everything that I have is thanks to her, like everything, through God. But she was one, and to talk about that, like my journey with God is like, he was always there presently, like being delivered through her. She'd have Billy Graham on me as a kid, and I'm like, who is this guy? But I would just like sit there and be like, man, he has all these people in these stadiums. I didn't think anything of it. She'd be always the one pulling me to Catholic Church, St. Dominic's on Frankfort Avenue, Father Gavin. Every time he raised the Holy Communion, he would look down on my grandmother and just give her a wink. And she was older. It was just more so of his loving demeanor for the people in his church.
Thank you for clarifying, man. I didn't know if Gavin and your grandma had something going.
He was one of the good ones. He wasn't one of those,
For sure.
So understanding that. And again, this is your guys' podcast, so I don't want to go.
No, you
get to. I appreciate you sharing all your stories about Gavin and Mary. But tell me a little bit, like, again, you meet your wife, you're taking on a stepson, right?
Stepdaughter.
Daughter.
But that's fine. I
didn't get a magnet, so
me and my wife, it's always funny, we joke, and it depends on who the crowd is. Like in a crowd like this, I'll say we met on christianmingle.com because she lives in LA and I live in Philadelphia. Then to other people that have even darker humor, I say that we met on blackpeoplemeet.com, right? Because I was looking for a black woman and she was looking for a black man. And, we kind of found what we wanted, but the melanin might not be exactly that. But no, we didn't meet on any dating website. I was out in the West Coast, just partying, living my life. And she at the time was launching a company and a part of that. And we connected, but it wasn't more so of me trying to, be too much into her, vice versa, even though I was like, man, she's beautiful, she's stunning. So we're just communicating like most people do, especially nowadays, via social media in the DM, because that's where it initially went down, in the DM. And next thing you know, it's funny, I gave her the corniest excuse to get her number. I'm like, hey, I'm about to go to work or whatever, but shoot me a text. So mind you, we can keep texting.
For sure, yeah. You just gotta.
But it was just on like, here's my number or whatever. And I think her just being.
It's just a matter of like respect. Like, how long are we gonna hang out here in the DMs? Like, I need your phone number.
And her just being who she was, I think she was somehow like, hey, here's my number. I'm the woman and stuff like that. Like you as the man. So boom,
for her. Man,
we start communicating, FaceTiming daily. I'm flying out there. She's flying out here, flying, stay. And it got to a point where I'm like, man, I really care for this woman. Like I remember us walking on Runyon Canyon. She loves hiking. And she started like pressing me about Alfie, my younger brother. And she was like, well, why don't you do this for him and do this? And I looked at it, I was like, I had legal guardianship of him since I was 18. I've been taking care of him. And like, who are you to sit here? And she wasn't more so pushing me to say I'm not doing a good job. She was like, there's so many other things you could also be doing for him.
She was trying to build with you.
She wanted to see him be more social, get out there, find people that identified just how he is from a neurological
aspect. That made you go, hey, I think she's it.
100%, because no other woman that I dated or even like communicated with that knew I had my younger brother that he lived with me, like was essentially a child.
Yeah.
Never cared to that point, that quick, that fast. So it was in that moment I remember being on the account like, man, like, I think I love this woman. And then fast forward, a couple months later, I asked for her father's hand in marriage while she's still out there. She doesn't know this. He grants it.
She's going to find out now.
Well, she knows this now. I'm talking about in that moment. Because she was talking, like I told her, I was like, you come here and you won't have to work and all these. Not to say I was sick, because she was very independent herself, but I was saying, like, I'm not going to force you to come out here to like work even harder. Like, you come out here, and her being her, she's like, I'll come out there if somebody offers me a job. So she puts her resume out, and like right away on the first day, she got like 3 pings, and one place was a corporate big box realtor out in Delaware. And then next thing you know, she's here, and we're just, man, living together. And then we officially get married in June of 2018.
So what happened? You guys obviously were not Christians really at that point. What happened through this process?
So my wife always talked about God, and always talks about whether she was 6 or 7 when she first was like introduced to the concept of Jesus Christ, and then really accepting into the faith at 9, which she tells a powerful story with that. Me, on the other hand, Catholic, believing in God, but not really walking in the faith as it is, called to me to be a child of God and the stand that I should be following. So what really brought us to that point was the Block Church. Truthfully, it was the Block Church. I grew up on Indiana. Well, grew up. I had a house on Indiana, moved there in March of 2014. And you guys officially came October of 2014 down at the Richmond Hall.
September 21st, but...
There you go, exactly. 11 years in the making, one by one. So with that, she would walk past the church and see and be like, she would talk about church. I'm like, I go to church, I go to Catholic church, I go every Easter and Christmas. I fit my quota.
Yeah.
And it's so funny to laugh at it now, to where now, fast forward in this current moment, like, it's blasphemy to miss church on Sunday. And if I do, it's only because the city of Philly needed me that much more. But I still try to make the Center City at 5 o'clock.
Right.
Holy. What's it been like pastoring these two and their process of?
It's been great,
because you're their location pastor.
Yeah, so it's funny. So Mo, I love her, man. She's just amazing. She tells a story of how you guys were skeptical of us as a church. The joking,
you guys had pixie dust.
You thought we were like a cult, and like what's going on here and stuff. And so I remember Mo's first Sunday vividly, and we were at Richmond Hall. She comes in. And I begin a dialogue with her, very short and brief. Can really tell that Mo's very skeptical. I'm here to learn. I'm not going to warm up to you. I'm not going to change who I am. I'm just going to be myself, and I'm here to like investigate. And she was like that for a while. And I even remember we did a membership Sunday once, and she had taken the membership class, came to the membership initiation, but didn't partake in it. And I just remember us having this initiation moment, welcoming all the new church members, and she's like in the back, and I'm like, well, I guess Mo's not becoming a But I've always respected that about her, and as she warmed up and has, built community, and we're chatting, and man, you were always part of her prayers. From one of the first conversations we talked about, we really got vulnerable. It was, always spoke highly of you, and always prayed that you guys would be on a spiritual journey together with the Lord. And it was really cool praying that with her, and knowing that you're just a few hundred yards away every Sunday while she's coming, attending, and doing this, and to see you come to faith and grow in your faith, mature in your faith, and really grow in your understanding of the Lord, and now leading your entire family in the house of God has been a really beautiful story. And
shout out to all the fervent praying wives out there. Truly,
there's nothing like the power of a praying wife. And your wife is actually so passionate about this. She has led so many women in our church year after year after year. She's actually currently leading a group for new wives to help them be the best wives that they can be. And the reason I say all of this is it's just been a journey to see you guys come from that one skeptical visit that Mo did that one time, that act of faith. And I don't mean any of this to diminish any of Mo's current leadership and what she does, but it's beautiful to see now you lead your family in this, and you guys doing it together has been a really beautiful shift. And I think what a testimony it is for every wife in the waiting right now who's praying over her husband, believes in him, who's a great leader, who's a great father. And this is the thing, morally, you're an integrous guy, regardless whether you are in the faith or not. And but we know that morality by itself won't get us into the kingdom of heaven.
Amen.
There's only but one way. And so,
I think that's where a lot of men have hesitation, because I have a lot of friends that are like in leadership roles, and I'll talk about God and knowing how to but a lot of them are like reluctant and resistant, and I can identify because I was once there, you know, and just knowing like some people you can lean in and certain things, keep inviting, to say like keep sowing, keep throwing them seeds, and after a while, like things will grow.
What did it for you? What clicked though? What was the moment? Was there a moment you were overwhelmed in a message?
I'll be honest. It was pride that brought me into the church, because I was like, why does my wife keep going to this church? And what is in here, and what other guy is she dating and stuff like that? Not to the serious extent, but like natural, like what's going on?
You know,
hey, Dan, how's it going?
If you don't step up somebody else,
her weeping for her husband, and Dan's like, she's meeting some dude at the block.
That's the flesh, you know. It'll get to
whatever it takes.
I wasn't winking at her during communion, I promise.
But I remember just like, all right, I'll show up. I'll start coming. I remember it was like 2020, like right around like after the pandemic. And that was after her father passed in May of 2020, that I did notice her going to church, because she felt that yearning, that missing aspect that her husband wasn't giving her. And I'm so glad that it happened the way it did, because if it was up to me, we might not have even went into the church, because I'm just a typical Philadelphia guy that I can handle it all myself. I'm good. I don't need nothing. I don't need to be vulnerable with Joey or Julio or nothing. What is community? That sounds soft. That sounds this. And it initially was just me going into the church, listening to this guy when he partially still had hair, speak up on the screen, and I'd just be like, I kind of hear what he's saying. Never read the Bible. Again, grew up Catholic, went through all these steps. And that was the biggest opening moment. I was like, man, I don't know anything about this book, but I judge this book. And, and I know so many people that are still like that. Oh, how do you know it's this? And it's just like, the difference between fear and faith is like so thin, but so many people just lean into fear. It's what they're accustomed to, you know, and that fear, we fear we don't know. So that just eats away. So you start putting all these other things to where, no, I don't want that, because God forbid if I did have to do that, it means I have to change my wicked ways, you know, not to say they're calling it exactly that, but when you're living in sin and it just becomes normal, you don't know. And sin, I can name things. People are like, oh my goodness, he's going so far. One thing I can truly say in my journey is like, it's levels to this. And I know both of you are advanced in levels that I'm not at yet. And like I say, I humbly keep that, but I'm chasing you and I'm behind you and I'm coming. But I remember there was one, maybe like 2 or 3 years ago, there was a church event that you guys had off of Cumberland and Coral at like the one school. I forget what it was.
Team night.
It was a team night. And during that, me and my wife were going through like, and I identified like, it seems like every single time we get closer to the Lord as a family, like just strife just comes in, or like doubt or uncertainty or issues. And God presents me an opportunity to be more patient with my wife. But here I am now just making her feel how I shouldn't, because I have this built up insecurity that I don't know how to vulnerably speak on, but I just remember being hurt that night, just feeling like so sad for whatever reason. And he prayed over us, and he said something that he talked about as you unlock these new levels, and there's like a glass roof. As you break through it, it's not always easy just to break through it. Sometimes you're going to bounce against it and stuff. But when you break through that another level, it's even harder. And it is. It's not to say like, oh, I became a Christian and everything is just great and grand. Things have been great and grand, secondary thanks to Jesus Christ. But with that, life hasn't become any easier, but it has become better.
Yeah.
Might not get easier.
Oh, but it's going to get better.
It's going to get
better.
Says
it every week.
I say it every week, right?
Yeah.
It's good. It's great. We got to start our initial descent here, or at least try to land this plane.
It's such a great conversation. I know people watching, like, they're whether we're 30 minutes in, 40 minutes in, they're like, man.
Well, I think what we're taking away here is like, particularly as men, and people in leadership roles, like leadership is everywhere and everything. And as a husband, you're leading. As a father, you're leading. You're 18 years old, having to raise your autistic or, your brother with Asperger's, whatever it is. And, you've been presented with leadership opportunities and moments. And then as you surrendered your life to Jesus, while it hasn't always been easier, it has gotten better. And God started expediting your opportunities and your growth, because God's going to put you where he wants you,
right,
and where he needs you so that the kingdom can be built. I would say, you may not be able to officially say this, but it seems like to me you go to your work every day on mission as a kingdom builder. You're not a firefighter. You're not an executive leader in our city. That you are, but it's secondary. You're a believer. You're a Christian. I'm there to introduce the gospel in every space and place.
There hasn't been one situation I've encountered in leadership since I've been in my faith that God is not the answer. Mm-hmm. There hasn't. I can't find one. What I mean by that is like, in my cubicle at work that you'll see, my workstation, the highest thing that sits on my cubicle is a Bible. And right next to that is a cross of Jesus. And at first, bringing this into the workplace, I was like, I talked to my wife about this. But I looked at my wife, I said, I'm not turning down my love for Jesus because somebody else might just have a perspective of something that represents. And that would be a great conversation to have. And since I've had it, not one person has questioned it, and I have close friends that I work with that are of the Islamic faith. And being able to have great dialogues about Jesus, who I've recently learned is in the Quran as Al-Musayya, so diving into conversations with people in Egypt about this, that's primary, all of that. So since I've been at work, like finding common ground and like, no matter the situation presents, I say to myself quietly, God, what do I do, right? How do I respond? Because right now I want to respond this way. And I know that's not the holiest. Thank you for listening right now. Okay, I'm going to lead off with a humanistic approach, right? I'm going to have some emotional intelligence here, Lord. I want to have these holy qualities that you want me to deliver. And now in times when I have to be direct and stern, just like the Lord is, direct and stern is needed. But I say that to say, I've seen such an increase, abundance in so many levels of every decision that I look to make. Even here, before I got on your podcast, I'm sitting over there reading my Bible, talking to God, like, I don't know what we're about to talk about. I literally didn't know the agenda.
We don't either, man.
But God, like, please lead me through this, please. And it's not to be corny or cliche or anything like that. It's like, no, like truly putting God first and everything. Even when I feel like I'm in like a sinful aspect, like I just cut this guy off in traffic and I'm just a jerk because why am I doing that?
Julio, is he a good congregant, man, or is he a problem?
Dan's great. Dan's great. We're all on a journey together. But Dan, I want to go back to, I feel like there's 3 audiences that would really benefit from where you're at. Okay, so I'm going to go one by one, and I'm going to ask you for your advice for this particular individual that might be watching. Talk to a 18-year-old whose life has beat them down as it beat you down. They don't know what to do with their life. They don't know where to go. They know that they want to break free of poverty. They know that they want to step into a life that is better than where they're at. Somebody in that, a young man who's listening right now, a young woman who has gone through tremendous trial, what is your counsel to them as they lead themselves?
Find your community, like people that you know that you can truly lean into. The worst thing you can be at 18 is not having people around you that want the best for you. You know, you might not have that family dynamic, that you have that support. You may want to do something in this journey doesn't align with the people that are around you. So finding people, whether that's you, that when you were in high school and you know you have that core group of friends, like they got your back. But then also ask yourself as you watch this, like, what am I doing to better myself or get myself out of these situations? Because it's never about like what happens to you. It's always about how you respond.
It's great.
And that's everything in life. You know, my grandmother used to always say to me, the man with no shoes thought he had it bad till he met the man with no feet. And that always made me think about perspective.
Great.
So good.
It's great.
Like I sit here and I'm like, man, I get, and then I just humble myself.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, life isn't as hard as I'm thinking that it is. And for that 18-year-old, like really, like if I was 18, I wish I was involved in a local church like I am now. And again, not to covet like that thought and wish I was, but like, man, like how beautiful God just aligned me in different places. And it had nothing to do with me just saying, oh, I want to be Christian and I want to be a part of this trend, because that is something that I get fearful of just naturally, like people just seeking Jesus for the idolization of somehow being a part of a genre that's seeking Jesus, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So being able to find like a true local church in your community, that's a thought process that I have. And I'm pretty sure you guys might be able to provide context to this. Like, where are the other churches that are like our church? And I know they're out there. I'm not saying that like, oh, we're the only, what I'm saying is like,
well, I'd say if you're an 18-year-old or somebody looking for a local church, we'd love to have you in Philadelphia. But if you're not, there's plenty of great places and we can help people find them. We'd be happy to. Just for context, you're going to ask those other two questions and we do need to move a little bit, but you're how old?
33.
You're 33. You became the executive.
I'm currently the acting executive chief. I've been in this role since February.
But just for context, I mean, God's advanced you quickly.
Ridiculous.
No 33-year-old should be an executive chief. And I'm not saying this is going to happen, but if you stay on this path, it's possible. You could lead the fire department one day. You could run for mayor one day. I'm just saying it's crazy how God has moved you, you know, and as you're answering some of these things, I want people to understand you're leading at a high level at a young age in a short period of time.
Yeah.
People should take what you say seriously. Julio, what's your second question?
It's great context. Second individual would be somebody who's in the middle. Maybe they're in middle management right now. Maybe they're still building towards the dream job that they're having. What would be your advice, your motivation, your encouragement, in a short, if you can tell them one thing, what would it be?
Identify what you love and truly like dive into it. So many people, and I was one of those people, again, remember I said I was in high school and I was like, I'm going to become a corporate lawyer because it sounded good. It rolled off the tongue. No idea what that meant, right? And then I found something I loved.
It's good.
And whether that was because it was how it impacted me, but I'm like, I want to be able to save other people and really do cool stuff. When you become, you know, an EMT and a paramedic, you get to do some really amazing stuff. And there's nothing that you can say the first time you revive someone who was clinically dead. They were flatlined, didn't have a pulse. And now to find out 3 days ago, they walked out the hospital.
Wow.
It's something that, you know, you can't even put a monetary value on that. So identifying like what you really enjoy. And as corny and cliche as it sounds, like a Bronx Tale, that he, you know, his father said to him that, you know, do what you love and you'll never work a day in your life. And it's true. It truly is. So many people just, oh, I want to go and get into this and do this because everybody else is doing that, but they have no passion here.
Yeah.
I have very close friends that went to college and got 7-6 different degrees and don't do what they love, but they just followed this path because So being able to, that's one message I always preach to the youth when I talk to them here in the city, is like identifying like, what are you really, you're passionate about music, and just give them all these different avenues they can look into.
Great.
And it's that mentorship piece to like, who can you lean on? Again, identifying your community, because the worst thing you can do is tell your idea or dream to someone who's just going to be pessimistic about it.
That's great. I'm going to put these in rapid fire questions, unless you got a more like in-depth one, but there's some.
Yeah, give it to him. I just want to hear, like, as we close, like, what was your greatest accomplishment in your career so far? And maybe that's part of your rapid fire.
Yeah.
And maybe some, like, the worst thing you ever saw that you had to overcome. But if you have some rapid fire,
let's get into those, and then we'll close out with some last Q&As. Yeah.
So I'll start with, like, that's a common question that you get asked as the first one, like, what's the worst thing you've seen? And man, it's a lot of things come to mind, and you want to say about like the traumatic stuff and different things, but anytime something is dealing with like children or like, this past year has been just rough for our city, know, like what happened on Cottman Avenue is something that,
talk about the plane crash,
all those first responders, all the public partners, safety partners that showed up that day and the forthcoming days after that to support that community.
It looked like a bomb was dropped. It was insane.
Some of the initial first crews described it as like they thought it was like a scene of a horror film.
Yeah. Pictures looked like it.
So imagining that, and then, well, what's the other side of that? Well, it's to see the resiliency of a community that when you really go through something, they come together.
Yeah.
And what they have done together to support each other. And it's just through so much pain, there's also the other side of it. And I seek that a lot in my career to identify. That's why a lot of times we like to know the outcome, because whether the outcome was, man, this was the best or it was the worst, it's being able to identify and look at yourself in the mirror as like, I gave everything I had.
Right.
It's just like a football player, you show up and you're giving as much as you can every single play, and you guys lose by a field goal. And you put blood, sweat, and tears. At the end of the day, you can look yourself and I gave it everything I got.
Right.
Damn, you've met presidents, you've driven with the highest people of whatever going through, but is there one accomplishment or experience in your role that's kind of blown you away? Just probably managing all of our Super Bowl parades, which we're grateful for, but is there anything else other than that,
I think, and this wasn't directly in my role, this was more so me, Dan McCarty, as the father, and my son, who is Daniel McCarty III, but his nickname is Snai. He's a part of CHOP's autism research. So a couple years ago, we were chosen to be like spokes families for CHOP, and they had this event at Lincoln Financial
Children's
Field.
Hospital of Philadelphia.
Correct. The best, hands down, Children's Hospital of Philadelphia. And they had an event that me and my wife spoke at. And at this event, it was Eagles players. It was people looking, to raise money for autism. But I just remember being up there and just speaking. They had a teleprompter and they probably wanted to shoot me, But I was just, as I am with you guys right now, just going genuinely off script and talking from the heart. And the amount of money that was raised in that 15 minutes was just absurd. It was more so the people coming up to me that directly had autism or family members, and just them speaking to me in such a way that like, wow, like my words to them really impacted them to where now that they're on fire to support this cause in so many different ways. So to me, like that's been one of my silver lining moments that I can just think in leadership naturally and it's a common denominator across the board of being able to genuinely communicate with other people in a passionate, vulnerable way. It'll never lead you wrong. And even when you're leading men, women, in any aspect, like you lead them to the highest level that you can just naturally, but also ensuring that your heart is always in the right place. And that's why I say, like, I always lean into God and just pray to him and then speak. And then, usually good stuff happens.
Well, when you speak from your own pain and experiences and when you're vulnerable and honest, it's the best way to communicate. It moves people. And I'm sure that's what was happening that night. Guys, any final thoughts or anything you want to hit?
It's great. Close? Yeah, just some rapid fire questions. Nobody gets to where you're at in career.
And
at your age.
Dan means you got to
rapid fire. Here. Nobody does that by being a dishonorable towards their leaders. Talk to us. What are your thoughts on honoring people who are leading you and honoring your leaders?
Yeah, it's always about, the respect for the position that they hold. And that's in any team that you have. Like I just said, I'd like to use football as analogies. Playing football, you might not like your coach, right? Or the coordinator of certain plays, but they have a vision that you're in a position, and no matter what your role is, like you asked me earlier, like no matter what your position is, you play a part. And making sure that your plan aligns with what the vision of the leader is and vision of the whole organization is moving forward, but also being the leader to where you notice something and you're like, I'm not trying to speak out of context here, but it's like danger close. Like, I don't think we should keep going this way. And that's also a leadership quality.
Yeah.
Being able to articulate in a way that you're not being disrespectful or insubordinate, but just saying and giving that honest feedback.
That's great.
On any team that you're on.
I would say you're adding value rather than adding an opinion.
It's great.
And that's what you're doing.
And that's great for youth pastors. That's great for staff pastors. It's great for people in middle management trying to rise. It's like, I'm here. I've got to support and honor this vision.
That's great.
And work enough relationally to where I can add value and go, hey, pastor, or hey, boss, or hey, whoever. Here's what I'm seeing. Take it for what it's worth. And hopefully you're not being led by an insecure leader who can't hear that. And even if you are, you have to manage it some way.
It's like the letters that Peter wrote about being excellent in everything that you do, and all the glory goes to God.
Yeah.
So in my role, no matter what my title is, Dan McCarty is X, whether it's back at my first job or days of working at Rita's, Chuck E. Cheese, or where I am today. It's like everything that I do, like just be excellent. It's not because, Dan McCarty's excellent. It's because God, my Father is.
It's great. The second question, rapid fire. Anybody who leads in a tough place, there's always a peanut gallery. There's always somebody who has something to say or disgruntled or, man, Dan McCarty might have, he must have bought his way up there. How do you drown out the noise leading at a high level?
It's hard. It's hard. It comes through different levels because my wife knows this. I'm a people pleaser, meaning like I don't look to just tell people what they want to hear, but I'm like, wait, they think I'm this or I'm that. Like, why? What's the disconnect? And trying to identify with them, but also understand that sometimes misery loves company. Sometimes people just speak and, you can't feed into it. Aaron Rodgers said this, and I quote this because it's like, don't worry about criticism from someone you would never seek advice from.
It's great.
Well, listen, great stuff. We're running out of tape here. So we've landed the plane. It's parking. But Dan, you've been a great guest. We should think about having you back at some point.
Yeah, this is just part one,
For sure. Part one.
Maybe. We got a lot to get to, but grateful for you. I hope you were able to take something from this episode of Leadership in Tough Places. Hey, thanks for watching this episode of Leadership in Tough Places. It would be helpful if you liked, subscribed, shared, commented, and we're just trying to get the message out for everybody who is leading in challenging environments. Thanks again.